So who is the best pilot in Starlink Battle for Atlas? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about that and much more. Hey there guys, PortalMaster9351 here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over my definitive tier list for Starlink Battle for Atlas. Now, keep in mind that this is as of launch day, this is as of today. I assume that in the future additional pilots will be added to Starlink, it's heavily implied anyways, but out of the Wave 1 Day 1 currently released pilots as of November the 4th, this is what I think could be seen as the definitive tier list for Starlink Battle for Atlas. Not everyone's going to agree with me on this, but I think a lot of people are going to agree, especially with some of the characters that I picked for the top picks. Now, there is the definitive tier list right there. I've created a little infographic for you guys. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly does this talk about? What exactly did you consider when making this tier list? Well, what I mainly considered was, first and foremost, pilot ability. Who has the most useful pilot ability? Beyond that, I factored in things like the mentor ability and how powerful these characters could become when fully upgraded. As you know, they each have a skill tree allowing them to be customized and empowered as they level up. So I did factor that in if I thought that would make a considerable difference. For a lot of them, it didn't change their overall usefulness, but it did tweak a little bit. Didn't cause any major shifts, but it did cause a few. So let's dive into explaining the justification for all these characters. So I'm going to be starting at the bottom of the tier list and then working my way up. So first up, let's start with the C tier. I didn't want to make a D tier because I felt like that would just, there's no one that's really bad, but there are definitely pilots that have better versions of their pilot abilities as you go up. Anyway though, the first one I'm going to be talking about is KHARL ZEON, who in my opinion is the worst pilot available as of right now. The reason for this is pretty simple. So first up, his mentor ability is garbage. It just simply empowers your pilots, fills up their pilot abilities as you collect Electrum, which is okay in some situations, but in combat is pretty much useless. It's only good out of combat in exploration-driven portions of the game. Not that great. However, his pilot ability is really and truly why he ended up on the bottom of this list. It's not a horrible pilot ability. It still actually is fairly useful. When I played KHARL ZEON, I found myself using it quite a lot. The problem is it's not as good as some of the other pilot abilities out there, such as SHAID's ability to disappear or LEVI's ability to straight up go invincible. The thing is, his ability is to summon an energy shield in front of him. Only in front of him, meaning you have to be facing the enemies you're taking fire from. In certain situations, this ability is okay because you can soak up all of the fire that's coming straight at you. However, in more complex scenarios where you're dealing with enemies on more than one side of you, it very quickly loses its utility unless you happen to be extremely good, and even then it's just more trouble than it's worth when you could simply be using another character that can go invisible or become invincible. It just doesn't seem like it's that great. Now, the one benefit that it does have is that it can damage enemies when it's done, i.e. the energy shield will absorb the damage and then release it in an energy blast when you're done. While okay, it doesn't do as much damage as some of the offensive abilities, and overall I just think that he's probably the worst character in the entire game as of now. Again, not a bad character, but definitely not the best. The second character that I placed on the C tier list is actually, in my opinion, a little bit better than KHARL ZEON, and that is Hunter. Hunter is the second worst character in my opinion, but he's actually much better than KHARL ZEON. Rather than having a defensive and offensive ability like an energy shield that can then release damage, Hunter actually manages to have a purely offensive ability. The reason that Hunter ends up this low down on the list isn't necessarily because his ability doesn't do damage or enough damage or anything like that. It's just not the most useful of the abilities out there. It allows you to basically target several enemies and deal damage to them pretty rapidly. I forget the exact name of the ability. I don't have the ability names memorized, but more or less he can just deal high damage to some targets while he goes sort of in this little, it's not like a bullet time thing because he doesn't really slow down time, but it just allows him to deal additional damage to certain targets through like secondary weaponry. I don't really have a good explanation for what it does. The point is though, it's just not the most powerful ability. Even LEMAY's crowd control abilities are better than this guy's single target damage. It's just not the best. Why not just use Mason's Orbital Strike, or better yet, Startail's Armageddon? Those are simply better damage dealers than hunters. So that's why he ended up this far down on the list, in my opinion. Alright y'all, now let's move on to the B tier. The first character that we're going to be talking about on the B tier is Chase. Chase is, well, not that great in terms of pilot ability, and as a matter of fact, when I was first making this list, I was only accounting for pilot abilities, and she ended up on the very bottom tier list. She was on tier C. However, her mentor ability actually compensates for her lackluster ability. Let me talk about her pilot ability before I dive into the mentor ability. Her pilot ability is basically to just give herself a massive speed boost. While this is useful, it is nowhere near as useful as Judge's ability to slow down time. Judge's ability to slow down time is so far superior to Chase's ability to simply go faster. The reason for this is that to be fast requires a lot more skill than just making everything else go slowly. You can do the same thing, it's just harder to do because everything is going on just so quickly. So that's why she ended up lower than Judge. However, like I did say, her mentor ability does compensate. So what is her mentor ability? Well, her mentor ability per level grants 10 speed to all other pilots. Now, you might be thinking, but Portal Master, that doesn't even really benefit them that much in combat. But see, here's the thing. While the other pilot mentor abilities may be something like grant additional critical damage, give a couple seconds of invulnerability, Chase's ability is extremely noticeable in all circumstances. Invulnerability when your shield breaks, which is what Judge gives you, is useful, but is only used in certain situations. Plus 10 speed per level for a total of plus 20 speed is extremely noticeable in every single scenario. If you want your ships to be the absolute fastest, you've got to pick Chase. And if for some reason you do like an extremely fast-paced playstyle, then Chase is arguably the best character for that, with her other abilities that just grant her additional speed and reduced cost to boost on certain ships. With that in mind, she ended up on the B tier instead of the C tier simply because of her mentor ability. Next up on the B tier, slightly better than Chase, is Eli Arborwood. Eli Arborwood is basically the MCCRAY of Starlink. What I mean by that is he basically goes in and does a very similar ability to McCray's ability in Overwatch. I always like to say it's high noon when I pop his ability. What that means is basically time slows down and he can deal high damage to targets that he sees. He basically slows down time, he marks certain targets with his little ability, and then when the ability is over, all targets that he marked with that little death mark take a lot of damage. It's incredibly useful, and although it is not as useful as Judge's ability to slow down time, because when Judge slows down time, he can still, he does it for long enough that he can deal considerable damage to a lot of enemies. And I just feel, and it also has unlimited targets. That's another thing I should mention. Eli's ability only has, I think, 5 targets at max. So with that in mind, it is definitely not as good as some other pilots' abilities, but it's definitely still a pretty decent ability in terms of taking down things such as giants and cyclopses. This is especially useful when you are trying to take down a high-level extractor with the giants that spawn around it. When this occurs, you can just kind of get in the middle of the giants and go like target, 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 boom, use his ability, all the giants take a ton of damage. Incredibly useful in situations like that. In situations where you're trying to take out cyclopses though, it's still useful, but I would only ever use this if I was going against bigger enemies. So that's why Eli ends up where he does. Next up on the B tier list is Razor LeMay. Razor LeMay is the only character that actually has a considerable crowd control ability for her pilot ability. While things such as Mason's Orbital Strike does do high damage in an area, it is not in the same way that Razor's ability is crowd control. For those of you that don't know, she basically creates a shockwave around her ship and can blast enemies around her backwards in like an area of effect around her ship. It's called Power Chord, and you press buttons as they show up on screen to release those blasts of energy. Here's the thing though, it doesn't deal a ton of damage. Like, it deals enough damage, but in reality, it's not as good as one might think. In that, I mean, if you're fighting giants, it's pretty much useless. This is a great ability though if you're overwhelmed by imps or even overwhelmed by cyclopses. One of the times that I really think is kind of difficult is when you're fighting a crush giant and you've got those little crush imps running right at you. They're very difficult to target, especially while you're trying to deal deal with taking down the bigger crush giants. Razor is actually perfect in these situations, as you can simply pop her pilot ability, get all the imps cleared off the map, and maybe even damage the crush giant a little bit, or Cyclopses, or whatever else might be around. So that's why Razor LeMay ends up as high as she does. Even though her ability does not really work well against higher level enemies, it is still great in terms of crowd control. The top character on the B tier list for me is Judge. Judge is quite good in my opinion, but still is not as good as Levi or SHAID in terms of his defensive ability. What I mean by that is that he can basically just go and slow down the time around him. I actually would almost put him on the A list. I felt like he was more of a B tier list just because he doesn't have any kind of standout abilities. His mentor ability is pretty okay though. When your shield breaks, when a pilot's shield breaks, they will gain 1 or 2 seconds of invulnerability depending on the level of the ability. It could be better, it's not horrible, but it's basically average. And I feel like that a B tier character is kind of a more average character, especially when you don't have like D and F tiers on a tier list. So that is why he ended up where he is. His slowdown time ability though is still incredibly useful and does allow for him to deal a lot of damage to enemies, and also allows for him to actually be able to dodge a lot of projectiles. It is far superior to KHARL ZEON's offensive and defensive ability simultaneously. You know, they're pretty much, I would say, KHARL ZEON, Judge, and SHAID are the 3 characters that have offensive and defensive abilities. I guess also Levi. And each one gets better every time. Judge can still take damage even when it hits slow down time. Enemies will still target him when he's slowed down time. As a result, he's just not as good as SHAID and definitely not as good as Levi. But he's still a cool character, and his mentor ability is somewhat okay. Now, let's move on to the A tier. These characters are some of the best characters in the game. They're not extremely overpowered, but they're still quite good. The first of these is Star Fox. I recognize not everyone actually has Star Fox, but he is still one of the better characters for this game. The main reason for that is that his pilot ability is to summon another R-Wing, a Peppy, Slippy, you name it, summons them, and basically they start to fight in an R-Wing against the enemies. The reason why this ability is so dang powerful is because that R-Wing operates independently of Star Fox, meaning that he can summon the R-Wing and they will shoot the enemies while he runs away. It's extremely beneficial on both offense and defense, and especially beneficial in space-based combat. It's also great though when trying to take down a prime. The reason for this is that Star Fox can focus on attacking the weak points on the prime while the other R-Wing goes and mops up the enemies. Incredibly, incredibly useful. His mentor ability is also really good and allows for the other pilots to gain charge on their abilities even faster, meaning that you can use Star Fox's mentor ability to get your other really powerful pilots their abilities faster, or even your weaker pilots if you still like them. All pilots are good, all pilots are playable. I want to say that one more time, but there's definitely some that are a cut above the rest. Star Fox is one of them, not only for his pilot ability, but also for his mentor ability. Second on the tier list is SHAID, or second on the A tier list is SHAID. SHAID is great. The reason for this is that she can just straight up go invisible with her pilot ability. Now at first when she went invisible I thought, oh, you can't shoot enemies because then you'll uncloak yourself. Not true at all. While invisible as SHAID, you can just keep shooting enemies and they don't even know where you are. The reason that this is so much better than like Judge's slow down time ability or KHARL ZEON's one-directional shield is that you can still shoot enemies while they cannot even target you. You can actually still be hit by projectiles though. You are not immune to projectiles. If you run right into a giant, or like if the crush giant like drops one of those vortexes or something like that and you fly right into that, you're still going to take damage. So it's still not as good as Levi's ability. Nothing can really touch Levi's invincibility ability. So, but still, it is far superior to these other characters. Also, her other abilities are somewhat cool, but that is why she ended up so high on this tier list, because of her ability to go invisible and just not take fire at all, being so superior to slowing down time or a one-directional shield. So SHAID. The final character for the A tier list is Mason. Mason has an incredibly powerful ability coupled with the single most useful mentor ability in the entire game. He doubles your experience output. That's actually why he's so up high on this tier list. If not, he would probably be placed below SHAID because his one-off pilot ability, while incredibly powerful, dealing very powerful damage in one spot, it's Orbital Strike for those of you that don't know, it's good, but it's only used one time and is not that great for taking out large groups of enemies. It has basically zero crowd control abilities. Although I will say you can drop it on an imp hive and pretty much one-shot an imp hive with his ability. So if that's what you're into, it's kind of cool. But the ability to double experience gain makes Mason's mentor ability so dang powerful. He is the first character that you should level up if you are playing this game to try to level up all your pilots, because he will make that go so much faster, doubling experience gain. I can't even talk about how powerful that ability is. It's so good. You have to level up Mason first if you want to level up all your other pilots as fast as you can. You simply have to, just because of that mentor ability. Now, we are on to the cream of the crop, the S tier. As you can see, these are the best of the best of the best characters. So with that in mind, let's start out with the first one, Startail. Now, I will say Startail is currently only available in Europe, so it's kind of unfortunate that one of the second most powerful character in the entire game is one of the region-locked characters. It's very, very unfortunate. But yes, seriously, Startail is so dang powerful. She takes everything that Mason can do with his Orbital Strike and just does it better. Armageddon summons a volley of missiles onto the ground wherever Startail is facing. But unlike Mason's Orbital Strike, they don't do as much damage, but there's so many more of them, and you can aim it multiple times because it's a volley of rockets landing on the ground. If you start out here, you kill all those enemies, you can simply turn and start targeting a group of enemies over here. With that in mind, Startail is incredibly powerful in not only crowd control situations, but also one-off situations. She can easily rend a prime useless. Simply take out the weak spot, aim at the prime when it opens up its faceplate, rain Armageddon down on the faceplate, and you will do so much damage. And that's not even with her ability at max level. As you level up her ability, it becomes so much more powerful. Her mentor ability is admittedly not that special. I mean, it's not bad, but it's nothing special. The real power comes from Armageddon, the second most powerful ability in the entire dang game, not even close to anything else. Yeah, it doesn't let her put up a shield, become invincible, slow down time, but the sheer damage output means you don't even need a shield because you're dealing so much damage. And now we have the best of the characters, Levi. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't like Levi. They say his personality is garbage. They just cannot stand Levi. But here's the thing. I agree, but also he is seriously the most powerful character in the entire game. Second to none, most powerful character. Levi is the best. Here's why. He can go invincible, and that simply means that he can sit there and not take damage. That makes him so powerful. Forget being invisible. He doesn't need invisibility. He's got invincibility. He doesn't need to slow down time because he can get hit by thousands of things and not feel a dang thing. He is so powerful. Also, as you upgrade him later on, he gets even more powerful when he is invincible, i.e. when you pop his ability, not only does he not take damage, he also shoots faster and he deals more damage, making him easily the best character in the game. There's no other way to put it. His raw damage output while using this invincibility, coupled with the fact that he's freaking invincible, is so dang good. Coupled with the fact that he stays invincible longer the more enemies that he kills, meaning that he is so good for taking out characters like a Crush Giant, because you can just, as he summons the Crush Imps, you just kill like the 20 Crush Imps that he spawns, and boom, your invincibility lasts even longer than it would have otherwise. Seriously, Levi is the best. And that, my friends, is my definitive tier list for Starlink Battle for Atlas. It's okay if you guys disagree, and if you do tell me down in the comments why you disagree with anybody that I've put on here. You think someone should have been higher? You think I'm overvaluing how powerful Levi is? Do you think that Levi's annoying personality is so bad to the point that he shouldn't even be on this tier list? I mean, seriously, tell me any feedback that you guys have down in the comments. Anyways, though, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been PortalMaster9351. Stay tuned for more Starlink content as well as other types of content coming in the near future. That is all I have for you guys today. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and shout out to all my patrons on Patreon, especially Liam Corner, The Collector Creepypasta, and Portal Power TV. That's all for now. See you guys next time.